Hi, this is Carlos Johnson, the friend of the family, and welcome back to part 2 of our training. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get powered up. As we resume looking at school-home communication, let's listen to what parent advocate Ann T. Henderson has to say. She mentions in her research that students perform better when there's great communication, that student attendance increases. More parents are engaged in the learning process when there's great home-school communication. Also, increased parental involvement at the school are just byproducts of when there's a great relationship between home and school. All of these benefits are not just so that adults can talk, but the benefits end up being young people, students, your children learn. Let's dissect that definition. Regular communication. Let me ask a question. How regular do you talk to your school? How regular does the school talk to you? Is it once a week? Is it once a semester? Is it once a year? Is it at parent-teacher conferences? How regular is the communication? Now that we looked at regular communication, let's look at two-way communication. The two-way communication speaks to how do you talk? How does the school reach you? How do you reach the school? If the school sends an email, do they have the right email address? Will you receive it? If they send it and you receive it, will you respond? If you send an email, do you have the right emails for the right people at the school? And when you send it and it's received, how long does it take the school to respond? Can the school talk to you through social media? All of these questions need to be asked at your child's school. How can we, what's the best way for us to talk to one another? The bottom line is when messages are sent, can they be received? And is there a response once they are sent and received? Okay, we've talked about regular communication, two-way communication, and now meaningful communication. What do you talk about when you communicate? Is it about bake sales and fundraisers? Is it about behavior of your child? Is it always about complaints? Or is it too many times about complaints? Or is it about academic success tips? Is the school communicating with you about those things that you can do to help your child? Are you communicating with the school about those things you can do to help your child? Or is it always about complaints? Is the communication always about behavior? Is it always about fundraising? Now, I'm not saying this list of issues aren't important, but what is the communication about? Is it meaningful? And every school has to decide, every household has to decide what meaningful communication is between the home and the school. At the beginning of every school season, parents have to make a decision on whether they want to return their child to their current school or whether they want to find a new school for their child. Regardless of what we do as parents, there are only 3 types of schools that research tell us we will ever find. We're going to take a look at those 3 schools. After you've done your research, you'll be able to put schools in one of 3 categories, particularly as it relates to communication. Successful, high-performing schools have great two-way communication between home and school. They have great relationships. Survival schools typically only have one-way communication, and that way is from school to home. For one reason or another, parents don't communicate very well with the schools, and vice versa. Sinking schools, or schools that are better known as failure factories, have terrible communication, broken or non-existent communication. The communication between home and school is toxic at best. Okay, we reached the point in the training where we want to identify some solid points. First, let's ensure that our schools, who are taking care of our most prized possessions throughout the day, have the most up-to-date information: telephone number, address, email, etc. Secondly, let's make sure we communicate to the schools our children's assets and liabilities, what they're good at and where they're weak at. Thirdly, let's make sure that regularly we communicate with the schools online, through Facebook, through Twitter, whichever tool you use. Then lastly, let's return calls and take action if necessary. And let's ensure the schools do the same thing when we call them. These power tips will help us to become powerful parents.